Hello ladies and gentlemen. I thought I wouldn't be able to make a video today because I was really not feeling good earlier. However, I do feel a bit better now. Good enough. Nose has cleared up. I'm no longer as tired. And I am willing to make a V4 video, right? So, without much more yap, let's get into it. And as well, I'll include my thoughts on his pull value. So, the V4 changes start with his light cone. His light cone got changed from 20% defense down to 20% vulnerability. Now, personally, I would have preferred the 20% defense down because getting as close to max defense shred is really good, and it also keeps his E1's vulnerability at the same value that it is. If there's no other vulnerability sources, you will get a 24% or 36% overall damage increase with his E1. However, now they changed the light cone to be vulnerability, right? So when you get the E1 S1 combo of him, the E1 isn't as valuable as it used to be, since now there's already another vulnerability source coming from his light cone. Now, this isn't the end of the world. It's not like it completely bricks his E1 value or anything like that. It just does make it kind of worse. Meanwhile, defense shred is the opposite, where it becomes stronger the more you stack of it, which is why, in my opinion, I prefer the defense shred on light cone. However, at the end of the day, they're both close in most case scenarios, right? Next, we go into his follow-up change. His follow-ups now generate 2 gluttony instead of 1. And for those who don't know, him stacking up gluttony as much as possible matters because it leads to more follow-ups or enhanced follow-ups happening when he uses his ultimate. The goal is to stack up to 12 so you can get 3 more attacks off of his ultimate's enhanced follow-ups. However, he was kind of having a serious issue with basically never being able to reach 12 stacks unless I think he had his E2 in the earlier versions. However, now it has been fixed because of this increased gluttony change, and even without his E2, he can get close to or hit 12 gluttony decently often on his ultimate when he uses it, which feels a lot better as compared to his older version, and I do believe this increases his E2's value as well, right? So, with that being said, let's get into what I think about him. Now, I kind of hold the same opinion I did like a week ago when I made my video about Ashveil value when it comes to his supportive capability. His supportive capability has only gotten slightly nerfed in his follow-up teams. He no longer gives like 80% follow-up damage bonus. However, all other buffs are still the same, so the guy is still a buffing behemoth in base kit, and his early verticals are even more wild, right? Ashveil's E1 can give 24% vulnerability if enemies are more than 50% HP, and then 36% if they are 50% or less, which is incredibly strong. On average, this is about a 30% vulnerability increase, which is stronger than most Harmony's E1s in this game. And then his S1 giving 20% vulnerability alone is already competitive in terms of debuffing on enemies to Tribby E1, Robin E1, shit like that, right? So for a Hunt sub DPS who isn't a Nihility debuffer, who isn't a Harmony, to have this type of early vertical investment and being able to put defense down and have crit damage buffing in base kit, it is really impressive, and it actually makes me, curious, what exactly is it that the future new follow-up support is going to provide to trump even this, right? It does leave me intrigued. However, I'm going to leave that until later because, to be honest, I've had enough theory crafting these days, right? And then next, we go into his sub DPS. So obviously, his buffs as a supportive character play an important role in being a sub DPS. So yes, he's still a goated sub DPS no matter what for all follow-up DPSs. Now, he is not meant, his kit is not meant for older follow-up DPSs, so even though you can buff them, it's more of an indirect one instead of a direct one, and he's definitely probably going to shine more when he gets his future main DPS. However, nonetheless, because of how strong his early verticals are, and as well as his base kit buffing is, you can just randomly throw this guy on like any team, I'd say at E0S1, E1S0, or E1S1, and he will basically work as like a Tribby level, if not stronger amper, while also maybe being able to counter some enemy mechanics if they require being hit, right? So he is really strong at buffing, which does make him decently universal as just a sitting dunk amper on a team, which is kind of cool in my opinion. So his sub DPS viability is also good. Remember, they increased his ability to get energy from allies constantly attacking bait, which is on field, which has allowed him to get more ult spam as compared to his original version. So in the end, he can get comparable, if not more, follow-ups if in the future they make more tailored supports for him that are Tribby-esque but tailored for follow-up. Right. Now, this is where we get into his main DPS. His main DPS is okay. He is getting overly doom posted in my opinion to a very, very strong margin. However, he is still okay for clearing endgame content, and the best part is he does work with mostly generalist supports, which a lot of people may not be using as much as of late because Hoyo has been releasing a lot of niche archetypes and DPSs who prefer specific supports like Break with Dahlia or the Christos Heirs with Cyrene, or skill DPSs who want Ceridra, right? This does allow you to maybe use your bench Sunday, your bench Tribby, your bench, I don't know, whatever, and make him work for clearing endgame content for you for a good while. However, he is not as strong as a lot of V3 DPSs in their best in slot teams, right? Now, someone came into my stream a few days ago telling me that, what was it? They were saying that Ashveil was Evernight tier, and I had to like sit there stun locked for a good minute before I actually came to the realization of the line of thinking they were probably having, which is that his base kit, right, his base numbers, not including any teammates, is competitive if not stronger than other DPSs in the game. And then I was like, oh yeah, you know, I can understand how you get to this conclusion. However, unfortunately, this is a team game, okay? So Evernight still completely fucking shits on Ashveil because one, she has stronger Eidolon investment for increasing her own damage. Two, she has more synergistic supports with RMC, Cyrene, and as well as Hyacine. And three, she also has Mono Rem to rely on at higher investment levels, which would then even further shit on Ashveil, right? Evernight is in a complete league of her own currently, and in my opinion, she is the strongest main DPS in the entirety of the game. Even if Ashveil has higher base multipliers or on the same level, it doesn't matter because he's not getting the same tailored supports that the Remembrance HP scalers did, so he'll never reach their level anyways. Now, this doesn't mean that he could never reach their level. You know, that sounds kind of contradictory. However, it really depends. I do think that Ashveil is not going to be an Evernight and a Noxa situation. In my personal opinion, keep in mind, personal opinion, the reason Hoyo has decided to release sub DPSs before their main DPS this version is because they're probably tired of a Noxa and Evernight situations where the sub DPS just outshines the main DPS, right? So, with this being the case, I do think he could get indirectly buffed by maybe a future follow-up sustain, Nova Flare, maybe they Nova Flare Avon for follow-up, you know, a future Robin replacement for being the new best follow-up support. He can get indirectly buffed. However, the amount that his damage will be buffed by percentage-wise by these supports in his hyper carry, I don't think will be on the level of like an Anoxa with Ceridra Cyrene. I don't think it'll be on the level of Mono Rem. I don't think it'll be on the level of Evernight Hypercarry, adding RMC and as well as Cyrene, right? I do think they are trying to keep these sub DPSs in check to make sure that they are always weaker as compared to their best team with their main DPS. And that's probably going to stay a thing for quite a good while, if not forever. But once again, this is my personal opinion. You can bank on him getting dedicated supports and getting indirectly buffed, similar to maybe Evernight leeching supports off of Cassie. However, all I'm going to say is it's more unlikely, and on top of this, he seems like a very unimportant character to HSR, right? He only has a 4-week long patch. The patch is literally right before the Annihilation main DPSs with Silverwolf and as well as Evanesia, and this is the next part I want to get into. Yes, he may temporarily have very strong looking multipliers that will probably get shit on by these Elation main DPSs, which for some reason is something some people aren't considering, right? And this is why personally this Ashveil nerf situation bothers me as much as it does, and why I prefer his older version, and I also wished he had gotten more buffed Eidolons. He is definitely going to be weaker than these Elation main DPSs by, I'd argue, a large margin, because not only are they going to have this teammate shilling that, let's say, Mono Rem got, like with Silverwolf, but Silverwolf will probably also have Eidolon investment on the level of Phanon and Evernight, all likelihood, and then she'll also have the 4.x multipliers as strong, if not stronger, than Ashveil's, because she's the Annie main push. And this is just natural. As time goes on in the version, there will be more characters who get even stronger multipliers, and this cycle just keeps going. Ashveil having multipliers at his level currently is not anything impressive, right? It technically, face value wise, could be broken, but if you take into account that we have upcoming Elation main DPSs, we have Himiko SP, we have the future follow-up main DPS who is supposed to release at some point, he is probably going to be nothing special in terms of the version, right, when you look at it overall. So in my opinion, as a main DPS, you can pull him and you can play him as a main DPS and it will work. People doom posting this guy and saying he can't clear content after like 2 patches are probably just being doom posters to be doom posters, right? But he is definitely going to be one of the worst investments, if not the worst investment possible throughout the entirety of this version as a pure main DPS, in my opinion. So do what you want to do. You can go for his main DPS. I do not recommend it meta-wise. However, sub DPS and supportive-wise, I still think this guy has really good value, and I can't wait to see his future main DPS whenever that fucking comes out. It might end up being the Ice Age again by that time, right? Hope you all have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.